The installation of new water meters across the city of Newton is coming to completion this month, but for some residents, this has caused a flood of headaches. A group of Newton residents has come together under the banner of Newton H2O to try to bring the issues to the attention of decision makers at City Hall. Terri Flannery, one of the group's leading voices, is here to talk about her concerns, along with John Tenner. And thank you both for coming into Newton Newsmakers. What is the real concern that you and other members of your group have?
Okay, we formed because residents have been very unhappy and disappointed with the billing system and the lack of accuracy in records, and then being hit with huge bills. So we've, as a group, have come in. The city has been trying to have us handle this in a one-by-one situation, but we find that there are some common themes across the board that all residents, not just individual stories, all residents are facing.
We've identified at least 5 major areas of potentially serious concern to everybody in town, not just those who've identified it themselves. One, the city has been sending out water bills based on estimated meter readings for months, if not years, to people, often not disclosing that it's based upon estimates, not actual reads. Secondly, and I might add, the city ordinance requires that all water bills be based upon alternate actual reads or estimates. It can't be constantly estimates. Secondly, we've also discovered that some actual meter readings were rendered through bills where there was no verification or accuracy of the meter reading itself. That is in part what led to the citywide installation of new meters. But that left a huge problem for many people, having to pay a bill supposedly based upon an earlier estimated read. Thirdly, we've discovered in our individual dealings with the city that the city water department is simply unable to explain, either to any given individual or to all the city, how they come to calculate a water bill with a specific dollar amount if it's based upon an estimate based upon apparently some prior usage. How do they know further when they want to recalculate an overbill, if you will? How do they can't seem to explain to us how they come to the calculation they arrived at for the new, presumably and hopefully, reduced water bill amount. That is simply never forthcoming, and I happen to be one who still waits for an explanation of how they came up with a $302.27 number. I don't quarrel with the number in the sense that they honestly believe it. They can't explain to me how they got it. And furthermore, another fourth thing is that the city requires in almost every case that a water bill submitted must be paid. There's little ability of any given resident to challenge a water bill. And these involve bills sometimes in the $6,000, $7,000, $10,000, well into $120,000 water bill usage.
But is that just with the new meters? My point is, how do you differentiate between what has always been the case with the old meters and what is different with the new meters?
Well, we don't have enough experience yet with the new meters to determine if in fact that will not present problems going forward. We certainly hope that's the case.
Now, was that 5 things that we got through?
No, we got one more.
Okay, what was the 5th?
The 5th concern, which is a very grave concern to us as residents and citizens, that the city water department has shown no initiative or resourcefulness to reach out to all residents. The only folks that seem to get a response are those like the squeaky wheel that speak up. They have not done a citywide survey. There are, we believe, but don't know, there must be thousands of residents who've been overpaying water bills and want to pay the legitimate amount, but nobody's reached out to them.
I know I've met with many residents along the way, and a lot of people have different stories. What's particularly concerning, as John said, this issue with the estimated bills, and then the issue with the actual reads that have never been measured for accuracy. One gentleman had a consumption history scattered with mostly actual reads, very few estimated reads, but among those actual reads, he had like 7 or 8 zeros, even though he was home during those times, yet the city keeps insisting on the validity of those. So that's what's concerning. What happens is people get the big bill as a result of not knowing when the water was really used.
Without getting into specificity or any specifics on individual situation, is your concern at this point that your questions are not being addressed, or have your questions been addressed but you are unhappy with the answers?
The questions, not all the questions have been addressed, is one piece. At the most recent Public Facilities Committee meeting in December, I think it was December 7th, one of the Board of Aldermen asked the question, the majority of complaints come from where? This issue with the old meters or issues with the new meters? And the response from the Water Department was, most of the complaints have come from the issue with the old meters, yet we also have some concerns with the new meters. A few people have some concerns with the new meters. So the next action from there was, let's test 25 new meters. And the one particular alderman said, not so concerned with the old meter issues. Well, there's a lot of residents who genuinely were upset by that, feeling like, yes, that is a concern. That's a serious concern, because there are groups of people that are paying more than they should have, and then that impacts, future income, of course, but it's also bill correctly and collect it when it's due. It's that simple, and there's no real accountability.
Charlie, we have to put this in context. We get gas bills, we get electric bills. Nobody quarrels with how those bills are compiled and submitted. Water bills are a different thing entirely in this city. We think we need to address all the old pre-changeover water meter issues forthrightly. Every single person in this city may have been overpaying an amount, and maybe not. We deserve to know what our city officials are doing and how they come to the bills. So we should not just assume that those problems don't exist because we have new water meters. Secondly, we need to have more candor and forthrightness in explaining to the residents how bills are calculated. It should be explained actually on the bill, and there ought to be a complaint mechanism that's candid, forthright, comprehensive for anybody who legitimately or even illegitimately questions a water bill. I believe that because this is a problem we also are discovering is a national problem. In municipalities from Atlanta to Charlotte, North Carolina, and other places, Tampa, there may be some systematic problem here with how water meters operate and with how city water departments have chosen to compute and compile how much water usage is being used. And one last point. We don't know, but I have a personal fear. There is a lot of water literally being wasted. The city pays for it and then bills us because we aren't calculating the usage correctly, and we're not discharging the city's duty to fairly bill people.
You're talking about the inflow, infiltration?
That's part of the problem.
Part of it, or are you talking about something else?
No, I'm talking about that in part, but because the city water department has seemed indifferent to the potential for a much larger problem for all taxpayers, whether they have a water meter or not. This is something that really I think that the aldermen ought to take a look at, probably through the appointment of a special committee that's charged solely with examining all the evidence and coming up with a forthright, candid, open report. And we don't know what the answer will be. Right. There's enough evidence to suggest it will not be a pretty outcome.
We do have a website which is in desperate need of volunteers who can create better websites, and that's at, I think it's newtonh2o.org. I'm happy to share that with you after. And then there's also an email address, which is contactnewtonh2o@gmail.com.
And do that again for me.
Contact newtonh2o@gmail.com. And now I have to acknowledge that O at the end is actually a 0 because I set the email up very late at night. So contact newtonh20@gmail.com.